ensure that you provide the required benefits, even if you ensure that development is thriving in those areas, those do not become the criteria for the voter to decide who wins and loses. What is the only primary criteria is religion. And this is where I say that the tenet of Indian Constitution, secularism, is not followed in practice by those who vote in the electoral level. Because at the end of the day, the way voting happens, you will have your economic policies being driven. These are not two isolated incidents. These are two incidents which tell you what can be the potential threat. I would not say threat as the word, but can be a potential challenge to come in 2 decades to come. And another point I will tell you in these two districts, the rate of Muslim population growth is 2.5 times the rate of Hindu population growth. So what you see as a trend is places where the Hindus become minority, they tend to leave those areas. So what is exactly happening? What is happening is, and this is a trend which I am telling you, and with these two, and I will tell you from other states also, that the non-Hindu population once reaches a 25-30% trend, it becomes electoral veto in those areas. After it reaches 40-45% trend, it is what decides everything. So the Hindus who become say 40%, 30% start getting socially and economically excluded from those areas. And they tend to move away from those districts and Lok Sabha constituencies. So what happens is that when the non-Hindu population touches a threshold of 30%, there is very limited probability, a probability of less than 10%, that 30% will not become 50%. So which means what? What it means is that places which are 30-35% now, in 2 decades to come will become 50% plus, and possibly in next 3 to 4 decades might become only Muslim dominated districts. This is what is happening as a trend, and this is a very, very alarming trend, because those are the areas where the polity is practiced in a very different manner and only on religiosity. Let me move to my next statement. Yes. Now look at this trend, and this is very, very important. This is nothing to do with geography. I spoke about 2 districts in the eastern part. Now let me tell you another district which is in the southern part. And look at the interesting part I will tell you about Kerala later. Malappuram, for instance, and this is very, very important, comes right there in the southern part. Kerala is considered to be a highly literate state. But does a highly literate non-Hindu population vote based on development economic parameter in the place or a district where the literacy is high but demography is skewed? So this Malappuram is a very interesting case. It is different from Murshidabad. It is different from, for instance, parts of Bihar. Here the literacy is high, but along with literacy being high, the demography is skewed. And this is a very, very important point. Here also you see that since 1952, only a Muslim candidate has won. What does it establish as a trend? It establishes as a very important challenge that even though your literacy levels are very, very high, it will have no bearing, direct or indirect impact on your voting outcome. So again, we tend to think that higher the literacy, more will be the developmental parameters in your polity. That is not true based on primary data and places where your demography is skewed. So imagine Malappuram, despite being literacy level all time high, by more than national average in many places, still only vote based on religiosity. Now, I come to the interesting part. Now I will take certain districts, and this is Kishanganj in Bihar. Now if you look at 4 districts I will tell you in particular, which is Kishanganj, Murshidabad, to an extent this comes in parts of Simanchal, Nadia, Malda, West Dinajpur. These are all areas which surround Bengal in Bihar. Now in these areas, all of them have a unique trend. all of them in the last 2.5 decades have become Hindu minority areas. All of them are adjacent to each other with hundreds of kilometers of distance. This roughly combines a population of 2.8 crore Muslim population. This is a majority Muslim population of 2.8 crores. Now the question which has to be asked, that as this population has increased in these areas, you have evidences and facts of illegal immigration increasing. You have evidences and facts of homemade bomb making factories being found by a lot of security agencies. And you have evidences and facts which prove that despite any government welfare, these areas have become isolated silos. Lot of analysts think and foresee a danger that many of these districts are in the border areas. And many border areas are seeing a phenomena where the primary district or the village might be a Hindu majority village, but it is surrounded by Hindu minority areas. And in that scenario, what is very, very important, that imagine a scenario of a circle with a nucleus being Hindu majority. It is surrounded by Hindu minority areas. The issue is that the singular Hindu majority areas in these districts I am talking about tends to become a Hindu minority areas. So all these districts earlier, what was the phenomena which was followed in your border districts? Everything was not a skewed demography. Your Hindu majority area was in the center. It was surrounded by areas, villages which were Hindu minority. What happened was these Hindu minorities areas socially and politically impacted the Hindu majority central area. And because of this, the Hindus started to move away and the entire area became Hindu minority. And the worry is 20% of them are in the surrounding border districts, which also today or tomorrow can pose national security challenges. This is why I again reiterate that when I study tenets of Indian Constitution applied here, I do not see it being applied in letter and spirit. And this tomorrow, in fact today people are waiting, seeing through it, but 2 decades down the line, this can be even a security challenge. Because A, the demography is getting tilted, B, it is in the border areas, 3, the trend is not getting reversed, and 4, that it is exponentially increasing with every passing day. This is why I say that a virtual veto at 30% is alarming. Alarming not from the point of view of a communal lens, but alarming from the democratic lens because the democratic principles and tenets are not followed. B, 42% is an absolute veto. And 3, if you have a 16% is an inflection point where it has to be checked. When I say it has to be checked, what I refer to is that the majority population at that time should be aware whether the population rate on growth which is happening, whether it is organic or whether it is forced. Because what you see in all these areas, whether it is Malappuram, Kishanganj, the rate of Muslim non-Hindu population growth, Muslim minority population growth, the rate of growth every decade has been more than the Hindu majority. So what are you seeing and foreseeing in the next future? I'm not talking about now, but I am talking about 2040, I'm talking about 2050. This tomorrow can be a challenge. This is why I again reiterate and come back to my primary argument that our democracy's destiny will only and only be driven by how these areas function. Because if these areas tomorrow become isolated islands where different tenets are applied, then it will be a challenge for the idea of Bharat which we speak about. Let me move to the next slide.
Next slide. Yes.
Just yeah. I want to go to Bengal. Okay, let me tell you another thing. But this is very, very interesting and I would like your attention on this. The worrying aspect is that in tribal areas, you are seeing a very unique trend. And let me take a case in point in Jharkhand. Please look at this. The tribal population in many parts of Jharkhand was 35% in beginning of early 2000. It has dipped to 24% now. And the proportionate rise has been in Muslim minority population, which is 15% to 27%. Now, how does it impact? It impacts on land ownership rights also, because many areas of these tribal areas have the Santhal Pargana Act, specific tribal act, which ensures that the land ownership of the tribals only belong to the tribals. But because of the skewed population, you see interfaith marriages exponentially increasing, where the daughter is generally a tribal girl, because of which the person from the minority community gets access to land ownership rights, and evidences suggest a lot of illegal immigration has started to be seen in these areas. So our traditionally tribal states, demography is changing and its character is also getting changing. And let's look at it. How does it impact the socio-economic condition? What do you see? A local school in Jamtara earlier never used to have an off on Friday. Because of a demography tilt, it changes its entire calendar whether off is given on a Friday. There are prayers, there is an area in Garwa where a Hindu prayer and a tribal prayer used to happen. But because the certain part of the population, the students revolted to it, that prayer has changed. Saraswati Puja has become a challenge in those areas, and you are again seeing a trend where the Hindus and in particular tribals are fleeing from their areas. And this is happening in tribal areas. So it is not a Hindu-Muslim trend which I am saying. I am pointing that are there larger forces which are at play which want to challenge this very idea of Bharat, and they are doing this in a very sustained manner and a very strategic manner where they are targeting certain areas. You saw what happened in few years, 2 weeks back, if I am not wrong, in Himachal Pradesh. People were out on the street where they saw a mosque was not there and it suddenly came up. All of this cannot be, if you connect the dots, I see a larger trend where I am not saying that there is a trend to change India's demography. No, but I am pointing towards a trend to change demography of certain pockets of India and use them as isolated islands tomorrow to further activities and narratives which might not be in interest of Bharat. I will tell you why. So what I have proved till now in this presentation, A, it is concerted, B, it is pan-India, C, it impacts constitutional values, D, that it is also impacting social life, and E, there is no reversal which is being seen till now. Which means, what do I mean by reversal? I have not come across a single area which is a Muslim majority area, a Muslim minority majority area, which has tilted to become a Hindu majority area. So you are not seeing any place in this country where this trend starts, and if it crosses a threshold, it does not reverse. Yes, now look at what happened, and this is a very interesting case. I will tell you how it impacts locally. Now this is a Durga Mandir. This is a village which is in this area. This is called as Kangla Pari in Bengal. Now in Kangla Pari, there are roughly, look at this point how it shifts the entire social economic condition. 300 Hindu families. Now 300 Hindu families wanted to perform Durga Puja. 25 Muslim minority families objected to it. The administration, the panchayats go down, and the 300 Hindu families found it difficult to perform Durga Puja because 25 Muslim minority families objected to. Again, what I reiterate, that there is also a possibility of a social veto on your civilization. And this is as local, this is a village when I am talking about. It is not a district, it is not a Lok Sabha constituency, it is not a state. I am talking about a village. And the puja organizers here could not host puja on that ground. Again, I reiterate. So what I prove now in my presentation is we will talk about great values of our economy, but what is our strategic and economic thinking in areas where we are seeing a reversal of trend. And this is as local and as big as possible. You know about the case in Bengal, Assam, which you are very, very aware about. I will tell you another data point. there are 126 assembly constituencies roughly in Assam, out of which 40 are virtually only decided by the veto population. So if someone wants to take forward the Hindu cause in Assam, he does not begin from a point zero. He will begin from 126 minus 40. So what is always a level playing field which used to exist before, that level playing field does not exist. This is why, if you remember, the Chief Minister of Assam also pointed about the glaring threat which can happen in 2040. It is not something which he has said out of sensationalism. Data tells you, look at the way it has shifted. 73% was when we got it, 73%. 73% have now become 48%, and it has impacted 40 constituencies. And I tell you what, and this is not a statement which I am making of sensationalism. This is a hard fact. Verdicts in this country change from one political party to another only because our demography is still not skewed. Because it is the majority in this country which has more tendency to vote on particular issues of development, welfareism and other aspects. But these areas do not see that happening. So when you see democracy moving from one party to the other, one government to the other, it is only because of it. Because the minority has a veto, and this is happening on 40 constituencies, which is like 30% of your legislature is already decided it will only vote on religiosity. It is definitely a challenge, and that is why our democracy's destiny will be determined by how these states, in particular Assam and Bengal and other pocket districts, function. It is not a joke when you look at the data. And now I come to you, I, everybody is right now paid hearing what we saw in Tirupati with what happened with our Prasad, and all of us feel a sense of betrayal. But the larger question is what? Are temple boards, they are governed by individuals from only our community? Absolutely not. These are just few examples which tell you that governments across states in particular, and this is largely a trend mostly in Bengal and others, have non-Hindus determining the function of Hindu temples administratively. Can a secular state have this as a tenet of its policy at different state level? We need to ask ourselves on this, because this is something which is against the tenet and the principle of secularism. Now let me tell you another point, and please look at it, how it, this is what I want to conclude, but before concluding this, I will tell you each state-wise how is it shifting. Kerala, literacy rate roughly more than 90%, majority of the overall literacy rate more than 90%. The growth rate of the Muslim minority population 16%. This is more than the average rate of growth of population in Kerala, which is 9%, and this is double the rate of growth of the Hindu population in Kerala, which is 7%. Odisha, the rate of growth, even though here again, why am I mentioning Odisha is very important, because here there is no significant Muslim population, right, or Muslim minority population, but look at the rate of growth. The rate of growth of the Muslim minority population, which is very insignificant in Odisha, is 31%, whereas of the Hindu population, which is determining, it's 15%. Even in a state where it is absolutely insignificant. Let's go to a state of Tripura. Hindu population 14%, non-Hindu minority population 29%. Assam, as I told you, 14%, 30%, that's where the demography is shifted. In Uttar Pradesh, the Hindu rate of growth is 17.5%, and the Muslim minority rate of growth is 27.5%. In my state of Madhya Pradesh, the Hindu population rate of growth is 10%, and the non-Hindu Muslim population growth rate is 17%. In Gujarat, it is roughly the similar, which is a state of exception is what I can tell you. So, is there a larger trend which you are seeing? And what will happen in the next 3 to 4 decades to come when this country will move forward?